Alright, this was admittedly a fairly slow news week, so this video probably won't be very long, and you might think that's bad. However, look at all this stuff in context. This week was slow, but it's very likely that next week is going to contain the not E3 Nintendo Direct, which will probably contain the third major trailer for Xenoblade 3 and the last one prior to the launch trailer, as well as a potential treehouse segment that could explain systems and aspects of the game far better than I in an analysis ever could. A short video also means I get to sleep, and I get time to work on other videos that aren't Xenoblade 3 analyses for once. So that Amalthus video that I've been hyping up for probably months at this point, well, it's only going to be about 5 minutes, and it was only ever going to be about 5 minutes, but that might actually come out finally, so look forward to that. Before we move on though, did you have issues pre-ordering a Xenoblade 3 Special Edition and want something like that to never happen again? Well, with today's sponsor, Unus Mundus VPN, that can be your reality. With just one push of a button, you can connect yourselves to the collective unconscious of all mankind and travel through the memories of others to reach alternate realities where the pre-orders were never an issue in the first place. Using a new security method completely unique to the industry, you also don't have to worry whatsoever about the government or anyone else tracking your data. If your mind is connected to the consciousness of all humanity, they know your deepest, darkest secrets anyway, so there's no reason for them to monitor your web history. Worried about forgetting passwords for all of your many devices and accounts? Well, don't be. This service also comes with a one-of-a-kind password manager. The only password you're allowed to even make in Unus Mundus VPN is "You shall be as gods." This means that instead of fumbling around with dozens of different passwords and hundreds of different security questions, you only need to remember one password because it works with everything. And remember, you don't need to worry about that being unsafe. Everyone knows all of your personal data to begin with. They have no reason to hack into any of your accounts, so you are perfectly fine using "You shall be as gods" for quite literally everything you need to sign into for the rest of your life. This deal already sounds fantastic, but I can sweeten the offer even further. If you use the link in the description and enter code FRONCH, that is F-R-O-N-C-H, not Finch, at checkout, you can get 80% off the first 6 months of your order. So check out Unus Mundus VPN right now, and thank you to Vector Industries for sponsoring this video. Okay, that was really weird, but all jokes aside, I will not be talking about the Xenoblade 3 pre-order situation for the rest of this video, because first off, that has nothing to do with Monolith Soft and any of the people working on Xenoblade 3, so I think it's really bad form to complain about that in a video where I'm talking about how good the actual video game is. And second off, I uploaded 37 minutes of cut content from this analysis that were just ranting about that earlier, and honestly, that completely burned out all of the bitterness that I've had building up for the past few weeks, so if I seemed a bit obnoxious or standoffish lately, I don't know what came over me, but I think that's gone now, and a much more well-adjusted Luxon, who actually sounds like he wants to be here, is hopefully returning to the channel. So even though this is still going to be one massive playlist of Xenoblade 3 analyses, I kinda want to distance myself from that, even if I'm going to literally recommend you check out last week's video where I was a lot more annoying several times during this one. That being said, spoilers for Xenoblade 1, 2, Torna, and Future Connected. I will only be talking about information revealed this week that has not been talked about before, but I will acknowledge when a Japanese tweet talks about something that had been explained already, and direct you to last week's video once again, where I went over pretty much all of that stuff. Let's gaming! I don't know why that's my catchphrase now, that is far from grammatically accurate. One thing Monolith has been doing recently is posting about various characters in the game in 2 tweets. One of which describes them a little bit in gameplay and has a picture of them and the name of their class with the icon for that, while the second contains a short cutscene clip showing off their personality and what they do. Noah and Mio happened last week, and all 6 main character class descriptions were included in blog post 4, which came out last week. So this week I am only going to be talking about the video clips, because all that information has already been completely covered in my previous video. Starting off on June 6th, we got information about Lance and his Heavy Guard class. The video clip said, Lenz's hobby is muscle training, and he seems to be a little weak at classroom lectures. It has the power to protect your friends and is very reliable. I love it when they just make him even more of Rhine 2 than he was already Rhine 2. He's a meathead, he looks sort of the same, he's about the same height, he has basically the same weapon, he says get stuck in, and now we know that he's bad at classroom things. Also, he lifts heavy rocks. The video clip here has no voice lines to be translated because it's just grunts, and all he's doing is picking up a boulder and throwing it a little bit, just to style on Riku, who's also there apparently. Of course this man is bad at classroom lectures. The only school he has ever stepped into in his life is the Chris Redfield School of Fuck Boulders. Believe it or not though, there's actually an interesting gameplay and an interesting lore thing that can be gleaned just from this clip of the mechanical dude picking up a boulder, so this shouldn't actually be a surprise. You know me at this point. The first thing to note is that this scene appears to take place in the Mactha Wildwood area, which as far as we can tell is still a fairly early on area in the game, which means it's not unreasonable to still be getting introduced to new gameplay systems. And we also learned that field skills are somehow tied to characters in this game, and you will learn more the more people you meet and grow bonds with. It appears that Lan's lifting this rock and moving it out of the way for whatever reason, it doesn't even seem like he needs to get past it or get something underneath it, is some sort of field skill, probably the equivalent to super strength in Xenoblade 2, which was one of the few field skills you actually needed a lot of to get through the main story. We have seen multiple instances of rail grinding as a field skill, but every single time the character being controlled was Mio, so it is more than possible that that is actually a skill exclusive to her, while this super strength equivalent is a field skill exclusive to Lance and potentially Senna. This brings up the possibility that not only will you gain field skills by forging bonds with various NPCs, but some, probably story-required field skills, will also just be straight up attached to your party members, so you'll never run into the Xenoblade 2 situation of needing to open gacha blades or do side content in order to pass a skill check you find. You might just need to upgrade your characters, at least as far as skill checks needed to pass the story are. That was technically true in Xenoblade 2 as well, but they could do a better job of telegraphing that in 3. Story-wise, when Lan struggles to pick up the boulder, we can see that all the different little glowing blue discs on his clothes start sparking. This is interesting because I, and most people who paid attention in Future Connected, were under the working theory that those discs are somehow connected to Keves weapons and are used as batteries or something to power them up. The only people we ever see wearing them are Keves military people, and they share the same blue color that a lot of Keves weapons have. These discs are also very clearly an advanced version of the ones on Shulk's outfit in Future Connected, which if you read the flavor text for his armor set, you could see that that outfit was made out of this new, state-of-the-art patented material and developed alongside the Monado Rex. Couple that with the replica Monado vibe that basically all Keves weaponry has, and you can kinda start to see where things are coming from. The interesting thing about that is, though, they're sparking when Lands exert something, so do they not have anything to do specifically with Monado technology and just serve to boost any sort of Keves tech whatsoever? Does that count as doping when a Machina does it? All of these questions and more are very important, but I think they're definitely going to outright explain what the discs are and how they work a little bit in the game itself if they're drawing that much attention to it in a cutscene, rather than just leaving fans to infer from it based on what they know from Future Connected. More world building is always good. I don't care if it's just hidden in some NPC dialogue, it'd be nice to have. Speaking of Machina, the next day they threw a massive curveball at us and revealed information about the hero character Valdi, when I think basically everyone was expecting Uni or Senna at that point. There has been some confusion about this character's gender going around in the past. You might remember my first few Xenoblade 3 videos post-second trailer referred to them as she, and then I started being completely gender neutral because I realized, wait, that is probably a kid. It is way more ambiguous than everyone was thinking, and I believe even some official press kit material just straight up used they, them. However, the official English language versions of this tweet did refer to Valdi as a he, so that's what I am going to be doing through this video and anything else up to release, because that is the only official information that we have gotten in my language. The first tweet says, "The Keves mechanic Valdi is one of the heroes who you'll join forces with in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. When he's not tinkering with weapons and machinery, Valdi provides valuable combat support on the battlefield, healing allies and boosting their abilities." This doesn't tell us a lot about how he'll play distinctly from the other two healers we already know about. However, it does confirm a little bit about his personality, which sort of shows that while Lanz is very clearly Rhine to, Valdi seems to be Shulk to, or at least a Shulk as he would be if he were a bit younger than he is in Xenoblade 1. Also, I hereby diagnose Valdi with being 13 years old because of Xeno series precedent. Every single techie young kid with goggles in the series has been 13. Maria was in Xenogears, Lyn was in Xenoblade X, Tora is clearly younger than the 15-year-old Rex, but still old enough to be horny, so 13 seems accurate for him. And Valdi is clearly younger than the 18-year-olds that make up the main party, so there we go, we got another Xeno series staple on our hands. Also, I'm going to retroactively count Juju as part of that 13-year-old crowd because, while he doesn't seem to have remotely the technical acumen someone like Shulk or Shion does, he oversaw the construction of an entire town at 13 years old, so I think he still counts in that category. The katakana underneath Valdi's name on the Japanese version of the image that came with this tweet says the name of his class, which is simply War Medic, which is kind of funny because Uni is Medic Gunner, and these two both use guns, the main difference being Valdi uses what is clearly a leaked weapon from Splatoon 3, while Uni has one that's a combination of a Ham's ether rifle and a high Entia staff. Also, with the Splatoon comparisons, the dude literally has a backpack that's probably connected to his gun. This is straight up a Splatoon weapon. And to go back to the Shulk comparisons, this is the second character in the entire Xenoblade series to wear knee pads that look like that, so we might have Lance looking up to Rein, and we could also very easily have Valdi looking up to Shulk, because he has a similar job to him. I'm gonna read the text of the second and third tweets, both of which were Japanese exclusive first, before going over the screenshots and video clip that came with them, because that information is all needed to fully understand everything. The second tweet, the one that came with the screenshots, says, Rudy, Valdi's Japanese name, belongs to the Keves colony and is a mechanic who is good at developing and repairing weapons. No one is right in Keves' weapons department. It seems that his love for machines is stronger than anyone else, and he seems to give each weapon a name. That's why you can develop good weapons. The third tweet says, Valdi seems to have attacked Noah and his friends who are Ouroboros. I have no choice but to fight? It seems that the situation has changed. It then comes with a very interesting cutscene clip. We've seen Valdi in the hero slot of the party during what appears to be a boss fight against some sort of faced Mechon type unit in the second trailer. However, in this clip, we can see Valdi riding a smaller faced Mechon looking thing and summoning his weapon while saying Ouroboros and seeming to attack the party before Manana runs up and starts scolding him. It's likely this does lead to an actual boss fight against the machine he's commanding, before something happens and the party makes amends with him or convinces him that they're the good guys, and he eventually agrees to help, including helping them fight off against that other bigger Mechon. This is interesting because, you know how I compared Valdi to Maria from Xenogears before? Well, there's a character that was even more clearly Maria from Xenogears. Minor Xenosaga 3 spoilers ahead. My Magus is basically just an aged up Maria, and even has a smaller exosuit type thing under her command that looks very similar to the original Maria's much larger gear mech, and because of a misunderstanding, she fights the party in a boss fight before coming to an agreement with them. So it looks like they're actually redoing that plot point with Valdi here, but because of the hero system, he actually gets to do more than Mai got to do in Xenosaga 3, and will be allowed to work along with the party and probably do some weapon tune-up things. We now know that since Valdi is part of the weapons development lab that probably grew out of whatever Shulk was part of, and Riku is responsible for gem crafting, weapon modification is probably going to be Valdi's thing, so he is likely to join the party relatively soon, which tracks with the fact that we have seen him in the hero slot when the party was in the low 20s as far as level goes. As for the 4 screenshots, the middle 2 don't seem to be particularly interesting and are probably just ones that also show up during or around that boss fight that I was mentioning, as there's one of Valdi on the ground with 2 Mechon, one of which has a hilariously derpy face on it, and one of him just standing on top of the bigger Mechon that was in the cutscene. The 4th one is him bent over, seemingly out of breath or in an emotional state, in the same area as that bigger Mechon boss fight from the trailer, and we can see his tattoo much more closely, and it has significantly more red in it than any of the party member tattoos, which backs up the theory once again that the less red on your tattoo, the less time you have left to live, as older characters like Ethel and the party members have less red, while younger ones like Valdi and Ethel in the past have significantly more. The first picture, however, is probably the most interesting. It appears to be part of the same cutscene as the boss fight, but we can see that his right eye is lighting up, which is interesting because the right eyes of Keves characters when fusing into an Ouroboros lights up, and Ethel's right eye lights up when she sees the party as smoke monsters and starts attacking them because they're Ouroboros. So we know that the right eye of Keves characters is important, as is the left eye of Agnes characters, but we've never seen this whole light up thing on a non-Ouroboros person, as Ethel from Keves and Iserd from Agnes had the exact same pinky purple light in their eyes that seemed to allow them to see the party as Ouroboros, and we know Valdi knows they're Ouroboros, and we have a screenshot of his eye lighting up, but it's much closer to the lit up, brighter version of the character's normal eye color that shows up on the party members' fuse, except it's just a light ring and not the snake symbol. So it's possible that this is in some way him interfacing with the party and sharing his weapon with them, because we know hero classes will be usable by party members, and that will allow them to call on him in the future and get him as part of the actual party, and this is something that everyone who becomes a hero character that joins you actually has to do at some point. Or he's just less powerful than the colony leaders, and his ability to see the characters as Ouroboros just manifests differently. It's almost impossible to tell at what point during the cutscene, i.e. before or after the fight, this one screenshot takes place in, so it could very easily be either of them, but this is still super interesting, and while yes, these tweets did effectively spoil the fact that Valdi will be an enemy at some point and then become a hero, out of the entire game, this is the only boss fight that we know the complete context for, and we are under 50 days left to release. I understand people not wanting to look at any more pre-release material whatsoever and just going in as blind as possible, or being annoyed that they're showing off this much, but all things considered, we really don't know a lot about this game yet. The next tweet is extremely funny, not because of the content, but because I'm looking at both Nintendo of Europe and Nintendo of America's Twitter accounts, since America did not tweet the last post in English that I'm going to talk about, and because this tweet mentions the release date of the game, the only thing different between the American and international versions of the tweet, besides PEGI versus ESRB rating, is how the date is portrayed. So the Nintendo of Europe says 29/07, while Nintendo of America says 7/29, and the only reason I'm sad that the last tweet did not get a North American version is because it contains the word somber, and of course the international version spelled out using the British spelling, which means Nintendo of America would have to choose, do I spell it SOMBER, or do I spell it SOMBRE, because there are Canadians that look at this tweet too. Oh, I guess I should actually talk about the post. Ionios, the rich world where you'll begin your journey to end the cycle of violence between two opposing nations in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Explore vast landscapes, encounter new creatures in the wild, battle with distinct arts and weapons and more when the game launches, insert the writing of the date that's appropriate for whatever region of the world you're in here. This is arguably a third trailer for the game, but unlike the first two, it is under a minute long and consists entirely of environment shots, but they are beautiful environment shots, and I know that goes without saying because it's a Xenoblade game, but these are really good. It's unknown if these were just taken with dev cam to throw an artificial drone through some of the environments, or if they're actually taken from cutscenes introducing a new area when you get to it, but a lot of these shots show almost nothing new other than a look at areas we've seen plenty of times before from a new angle. And that's not even a bad thing. I like literally just running through areas in Xenoblade games, and this is showing me a lot of areas that I would like to run through. There's not a whole lot I can actually analyze, but I'll go through each shot just in case. The first roughly half of the trailer is entirely Aegis wilderness shots, going from a close-up of the finger of the fallen arm that has the distant fingertip in it, to a wide shot of some wildlife walking around, including that one new big yellow lizard model that I like a lot, and then an even further wide shot showing the palm of the fallen arm, the craggy area around it, and the fact that the sandy cliff desert-like area is very close to that stuff, suggesting that because of the whole patchwork nature of the two worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2 coming together, we're going to have biomes clashing into each other like this a lot more than I initially thought. It then flies through a cave in a valley in Aegis Wilderness, showing some more wildlife, and this is probably connected to the fact that we have seen parts of the Spiral Valley and some of the other caves from underneath Bionis Lake in this area instead of Milk Meadows before, so this probably isn't a new independent thing, it's partially taken from Xenoblade 1. And then most interestingly, it goes back to the Fallen Arm and shows an Agnes colony we've never seen before setting up shop underneath one of the fingertips. And most interesting of all, this colony has not been shown in any other shots of this area. So when I thought that the colonies might actually be roaming around the world or change positions based on story progress, this might actually be true, because clearly most of the times the developers have been through this area when recording footage. The colony was not here, but something will cause it to move here. This is also very clearly not Iserd's Colony Lambda, as that shows up elsewhere in the trailer and looks significantly different, And while it could be Kamaravi's Colony Delta, we have seen enough of that in the second trailer for me to think that it actually isn't. Which means this is a third Agnes colony, all before we've seen a confirmed second one from Keves that's still around in the present day. I am still under the assumption that we are going to see equal numbers of Keves and Agnes colonies, at least visible throughout the story, and while we do know as a fact that Noah, Uni, Lanz, and Riku are all from Keves Colony 9, and Mio and Senna are from Agnes Colony Gamma, there's no confirmation that those colonies still exist while the story is taking place, so while you could use process of elimination and say, oh, this is just Colony Gamma, and there's going to be something interesting with that colony moving closer to where the party is while Mio is still on the run, and you'll have to visit home as the Agnes party and try to do things and skirt around other people who might know Mio and Senna, this could also very easily be a completely new place we know absolutely nothing about, and some sort of big set piece for a revisit to Aegis Wilderness at some point a bit later on in the story, possibly after reaching Sword March and finding some big paradigm-shifting piece of information. Next is a bunch of Milik Meadows, now showing more of the Bayana shoulder-looking area than the Gormat/Gower Plain-looking area, and while we do get a very clear shot of the Bayana-Slag Hills, most of it is focusing on the cliffy, more watered area with different looking trees and different colored grass than either Bayana-Slag or Gormat has. And you could see that there are a lot of layers in this area. And while yes, Xenoblade 2 level design was significantly more vertical than most of 1's and revolved around a lot of dense things and falling down to reach certain areas, this is design that's a lot more reminiscent of a certain other Xenoblade game, and I'm gonna gush about that in a minute. We also got a fantastic shot of Rotbart walking directly into the camera. This is the biggest he has been in all of the pre-release material for this game. He has just been getting bigger the entire time. The only way they could go up from here is literally showing him killing a low-level party in the next trailer, so look forward to that. And it ends on one more Bionis leggier field shot with one of the guideposts in the foreground before cutting to Great Kate Falls. All of the Kate shots are just panning or different angles on areas that we have seen before, but we get some neat close-ups of Isurd's colony and can very clearly see that the Agnes colony in Aegis Wilderness is a different one from this. I know the whole base gimmick of Xenoblade 3 is, it's 1 and 2, but we put them in a blender, but this entire trailer felt more like a Xenoblade X thing. And very specifically, the Xenoblade X Exploration trailer that came out on January 19th, 2015. I did have to look up that date, don't worry, I'm not so insane that I remember the dates of every single trailer for the series. And, while yes, it did come with a minute of a new piece of music that we haven't heard before in any other pre-release material that sounds great, it just does not sound right without this music over it. Now, allow me to take something I've been saying for a month or so now and repeat it a few more times. Not because I think you need me to do that so you can understand, but because it needs and deserves the emphasis. Xenoblade 3 is a Xenoblade X sequel. Xenoblade 3 is a Xenoblade X sequel. Xenoblade 3 is a Xenoblade X sequel. I'm not talking about story, but everything gameplay-wise besides the core battle system is cribbing more from X than any other game in the Xenoblade or wider Xeno series, or anything else Monolith has worked on for that matter. And if you're an X fan who really just wants that port and sequel, you should be very excited for 3 regardless. June 8th's posts go back to character bios, and this time focuses on Senna. The first post is about her Crusher class, which we already know about, while the second is about her personality. Senna's hobby is muscle training as well as Lan's. It seems that they are doing muscle training together even during breaks. I'm very envious that my hobbies are also profitable. The clip is something that we have seen the like of before several times. It appears to be from a cutscene that takes place very early on in the game as the party is in Aegis Wilderness, are still wearing their nation's military uniforms that all look fairly scuffed up, and appear to be introducing themselves to the other side. So this is almost certainly after the Wild Ride encounter, everyone fusing for the first time, and them deciding to travel together. Senna says that ever since she was assigned to Colony Gamma, she's been Mio's roommate, and that as far as special skills go, she is very strong and likes muscle training, as if we couldn't figure that out already. Also, she flexes her noodle arms while saying that, and her design is just very funny to me. I love the fact that the tiny girl can lift just as much as the 6'4" robot man whose muscles everyone's been salivating over for the past 2 months. Actually, you probably shouldn't be doing that. They're gonna get rusty. Anyway, besides the fact that Noah and Mio are both off-seers and Uni and Tyon are both healers and the smart ones from their party, it looks like Senna and Lance out of the Ouroboros pairs are going to have the quickest time bonding and getting to trust and know each other better, just because they have one major hobby in common and seem to be the simplest and most straightforward members of their party. So, as far as their dynamic goes, it's probably going to be a lot of comic relief, but also a lot of wholesome bodybuilder moments where they're like hyping each other up, trying to get them to push their limits further and spotting each other on literally everything, and like always having their back in combat and stuff. And Lance being Rhine 2 is probably going to have the thing like, oh, you're really small, I should protect you. And then she's going to be like, no, I'm just as strong as you, I can protect myself, no problem. And she'll then bonk him on the head with the hammer, and it'll make a very big, loud, funny clang sound because he's a machina. It's going to be great. I just wrote 2 of their heart-to-hearts right there, probably. There's also the fact that she was explicitly assigned to Colony Gamma, which suggests that she was not born there like it's implied Mio was. And Mio being from a colony and not the capital, I guess could sort of throw a wrench in the theory that she's actually descended from Nia and doesn't just coincidentally look a lot like her, but that could just be a cover-up. She could have been genetically engineered and given false memories, or been genetically engineered and just thrown to some couple in Colony Gamma to raise her, or Nia could have just put her up for adoption and she wasn't genetically engineered or something. There are many ways around that. I know people really want to, oh, and they were roommates, Senna and Mio, but keep in mind, they already came out with the statement that Senna views Mio as an older sister. I know you just want women to get together, and Senna already looks like she could be the child of Morag and Brigid, but I mean, come on, you don't have to be creepy. Melia and Nia enemies to lovers is right there. Skipping over June 9th, as the only things mentioned there were discussing arts and how they work, and that was all gone over in excruciating detail in last week's analysis, we come to a music post. This is probably less exciting than you think it is because it's just the same song that's been available on the official Japanese website for the game for a really long time now, but keep in mind, most Xenoblade fans aren't as crazy about it as you and me are, and didn't know the Japanese site existed and had music on it months ago, so they get to hear this piece of music from the game for the first time. Not every piece of promotional material has to be for the superfan, and this is just one of those that isn't. That being said, there is a small bit of information that can be gleaned from this because we got an official English tweet about it, which means we have an English name for the track. This is A Life Sent On from Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This somber flute-based melody is played by Offseers Noah and Mio to mourn those who've fallen in battle. I've seen a lot of theorizing about where in the game this song is actually going to be used. Some people have suggested that it might be the main theme of the game, some people that it's just a cutscene theme, and others that it might have some completely different use. I think we can all agree that this is probably not going to show up in a battle other than like one big emotional one where it's just used to further the gut punch of whatever's going on, but where it's actually going to be used in the story is a bit different. I think the melody of this is almost certainly going to be connected to the main theme of the game just because Xeno likes doing leitmotifs, and Mitsuda's back on this one, and he does that even more, but I'm not fully convinced that it's actually going to be the main title screen theme, as those have been pianos and some accompaniment for basically the entire history of the series, excluding X, while this is primarily flute-based with accompaniment from other instruments, including a piano. The other interesting thing is, it's said that this is the song played by Noah and Mio, so that cutscene of the two of them playing together in an area that looks a lot like Mac the Wildwood is probably going to include this song or a variation on it. However, it's not a flute duet. There is a harp, there's a piano, I think I heard some wind in there too, so this song can't be completely diegetic, I guess, unless some of the other party members have also taken up musical instruments and have a small harp and piano they're capable of carrying around with them. What I'm guessing they're actually going to do is open up with Noah and Mio just straight up playing the song because the beginning of it is just the two flutes together, and then at the same point other instruments start coming into the mix. They're going to pull back the camera and not just directly show the two of them playing together, giving a more wide shot of the scene, focusing maybe on the motes of dust showing the people's souls being carried off into the afterlife, or other things like that, the other party's reactions, just an aerial shot instead of directly focusing on them from their eye level, stuff like that, just to represent, oh, this is no longer just diegetically them playing music. Or literally it's just part of the universe that when you play off-seer melodies on a flute, other instruments to accompany you show up. I'm not sure. That could be a canon part of this world. We don't know enough about how off-seers work yet. As for supplementary information, Yasunori Mitsuda actually commented on this post himself, saying, "This song should be the main theme of this game. It's a very difficult song with two melodies interweaving together. I'll tell you about the flute, but this wonderful flute was played by Mr. Akio Noguchi, and Oke asked everyone at the Tokyo Symphony Orchestra to play it." Now, Mitsuda is no stranger to getting live recordings done for game music he composed, and even Xenoblade 2 made use of the Bratislava Symphony Orchestra from Slovakia, and I'm assuming they had to stick a lot closer to home for 3 because of COVID restrictions, but the Symphony Orchestra for the capital and largest city in a country as large as Japan is kind of a pretty big get for as niche a series as Xenoblade, so I'm really happy to see them able to consistently one-up themselves as far as production value for all the factors of presentation with this game. And believe me, a lot of the cutscene animations we've seen, despite them being from minor cutscenes that are clearly not as animated and had as much effort put into them as the big fight scenes, those look better than Xenoblade 2 as well. This is going to be the best looking, possibly best sounding musically, and possibly best sounding vocally game in the series, and that's not even getting to the story and gameplay. The only remaining question is whether or not Mitsuda is going to go full Mitsuda and get a really out there eclectic ensemble to do some of the songs for this game. Like that time he got an entire Irish choir to sing some music for Xenoblade 2, and I have hope that with all the increased production values and the fact that this might be the biggest soundtrack he's ever worked on, we're gonna see a lot more all-time bangers. Speaking of story and gameplay though, after Mitsuda commented on the song itself, he also said in English, "Thanks everyone, and please look forward to Xenoblade 3 as it really is a great story." Now, I don't know if he said anything similar about any other Xeno game he's worked on, because I really don't like prying into statements or personal lives of anybody who worked on this series outside of things they have directly said in promotional material or interviews or things related to the games themselves, especially after an incident of things people said on the internet, probably including something I had said in the past, genuinely upsetting Soraya Saga a lot. So I don't know and don't want to check if he said this every other time he's worked on a Xeno project, but the fact that one of the primary composers for this game, who has been working on some of the most legendary JRPGs of all time for the past 2 decades and change, is saying this game has a great story, is giving me a lot of faith that this game is going to have a great story. The same day as a lot of this was also the 12th anniversary of Xenoblade 1's release, so several other composers who worked on the series were sharing their own celebrations and miniature covers of some music they'd worked on, and I believe Manami Kiyota shared a blog post, including an English version, that detailed a bit of her process of coming up with the remixed, enhanced versions of some of the tracks for Definitive Edition, so while that's not Xenoblade 3 news, that's still just really cool stuff. I love seeing the fact that people who worked on these games are so passionate about them and proud of their work that they're willing to celebrate even minor anniversaries like the 12th this deep into the series' lifespan. Also, I should probably double back to the fact that Mitsuda said this was the main theme of the game, so I guess it really is the main theme of the game, but I'm still going to come up with very loose justifications to try and pretend that I'm not wrong here. Him using main theme might be more so the main musical motif that's going to be part of the soundtrack than the song that plays on the title screen. Because out of at least Xenoblade, and I think Xeno as a whole, the only time the title theme was named main theme was in Xenoblade 1, the soundtrack for which Mitsuda did exactly one song, and while Xenoblade X had a song literally called Theme X, that was not the title screen theme, it was an important cutscene theme that also had its motif reused in other occasions. As for Xenoblade 2, while yes, it does have a title screen theme that's used frequently in other leitmotifs called Where We Used to Be, that's not called the main theme, and the only song with Xenoblade 2 in its title is Where It All Began, which is a different song also making use of that same leitmotif, so it is extremely likely that when he says it's the main theme of the game, it's just the most prominent version of whatever the main leitmotif is, and the title screen is going to have a piano rendition of it instead of the flute duet. It is also probably worth noting that I do not and have never played the flute, and while I did play clarinet, I don't think I've even opened the case for it since graduating high school over 5 years ago at this point, so I can't comment on his statement about how difficult it was to play, but based on the complexity of the melody and the fact that you have two of the exact same instrument doing things together, while also adding some other things in the mix, I can understand why he said it was hard to play. But Everyone involved did a fantastic job with the music, and I can't wait to hear more out of this game. Alright, so cool songs are nice. Mitsuda praising the story is nice. Wholesome stories about the passion everyone has for their craft is nice. So let's move on to Uni eating grass. Okay, full disclosure, that might not be strictly true, but we did learn that her hobby is collecting clovers, and because the game hasn't come out yet, we know almost nothing about these characters' personalities, so the internet's going to take the one fact we know about her and somehow flanderize her before her depth has even been revealed, which is going to lead to her being completely obsessed with various weeds and probably shoving them into her mouth by the end of the week unless we get an actual character trailer. This is not a bad thing. The jokes about it are hilarious already. First tweet is just the description of her medic gunner class that we've seen already, while the second contains a cutscene clip again from the party introducing themselves. Uni has been a childhood friend of Noah and Lance since she was a childhood friend, and she seems to trust them very much. It's a rough impression, but the roots are delicate, and it seems that she has a cute hobby. This is very Englishy, but at the start it's just reiterating what we already knew about the Keves party, that they knew each other since they were child soldiers, and became close friends, and then it's also just saying that she has a rough personality and exterior, but that she does have a heart of gold, and that her hobby is much cuter than you'd expect based on how she acts. In the cutscene, there are a couple interesting things to latch onto, and I'm basing this off of mashing several different translations I've seen together. She talks about being part of Colony 9's military, so again, same place Noah, Lance, and Riku are from, and we've seen them as kids together, so that's not a surprise. And then she mentions guarding the Offseers, but also the fact that she's been with Noah and Lance and they've been trouble since she was young, with her needing to use her healing abilities to help everyone out. I initially was like, oh, okay, they were all just the same type of child soldier when they were together. Then later on, Noah became an Offseer, and Uni happened to be invited to guard him. But it's also possible that Noah became an Offseer, and Uni, and possibly also Lance, chose to become this kind of special guard person in order to stick with him, because they've been friends for so long. Then she just also mentions that her hobby is collecting quote-unquote fortune clovers. This is not a term that we've heard anywhere in the Xenoblade series before. However, it does sound suspiciously like the name of a collectible, so this is probably going to be an item we're actually going to be able to obtain in-game. Whether it will be a standard item orb thing that you can just go around and find when you get near to Colony 9 as part of the story, or some sort of special, more long-game scavenger hunt type side quest thing that lets you upgrade Uni remains to be seen. But if it is the latter, I sure hope it's more Korok seeds with a better reward than blood lobsters, because it's been almost 7 years since X, and I still have flashbacks to that. Thank you, game. Okay, here is where the outro goes, and I'm in a bit of a sticky situation because I want this to be longer than the rant that I cut out from this video, but also not much longer than the shortest analysis I've done before. So I'm going to keep this very brief. Thank you so much for watching. As always, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for a lot more Xenoblade 3 stuff, but also hopefully a lot more stuff about Gears Saga Xenoblade 1, X, and 2, and not just the game that's coming out soon, because hype fatigue, if that's a term, has probably started hitting in for me. I've been seeing massive diminishing returns on making these weekly analyses, and I think a lot of my audience just wants me to make Xeno content instead of still capitalizing on the fact that there's a new game coming out in less than 2 months. So I'm gonna see what I can do about other stuff like that. Until then, this is Luxon, signing off.